All right, so ready to like really get into India's budget for 2025, 2026. We're going way deeper than the headlines this time.
Way deeper.
We've got the whole speech by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman right here.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, there's so much more to it than like what makes it into like a quick news article.
Absolutely.
This is like your ultimate guide to what really matters in this massive document.
It's a big one, and it's not just about the numbers themselves. It's about the whole vision of where India is heading. You know, the finance minister isn't just like, laying out, here's where the money's going. She's really painting a picture of what a developed India,
Oh, wow.
a Viksit Bharat, could actually look like.
Okay, Viksit Bharat.
Yeah.
That's catchy, but what does that actually mean, like, for the average person?
So think about this. No poverty at all. Every single kid getting a quality education, healthcare that people can actually afford. Jobs for everyone with the skills to match those jobs, and way more women actively participating in the economy. Plus, Indian farmers feeding not just India, but the whole world.
Whoa.
It's pretty ambitious.
That is a huge list.
It is.
I can see why they call it a vision. It's almost like a dream.
Yeah.
But how do you get from, where things are now to that?
Well, that's where the actual budget comes in. It identifies 4 key engines to make this growth happen, and those are agriculture, all those small and medium businesses we always hear about, investment, and exports.
Got it.
And the fuel. What makes these engines run? Reforms. Big changes, shaking things up.
Okay, I'm starting to see how the pieces fit together.
Yeah.
But I'm a details person.
Okay.
Give me some specifics.
Sure.
Examples of what this looks like.
Okay, so let's start with agriculture.
Okay.
It's not just about growing more crops.
Well,
it's about making the whole system work better. There's this program, the Prime Minister Dhantanya Krishi Yojana, and it's focusing on 100 districts where agriculture isn't very productive. They're going to try to improve everything from irrigation to getting loans for, get this, 1.7 crore farmers. That's over 17 million people.
Wow.
So do you think focusing on specific regions like this is the best way to go, or should they be spreading the resources more evenly?
It's definitely very targeted support.
Yeah.
And then there's that Atmanirbhar Bharta Impulses mission.
Right.
Which is all about making India self-sufficient in things like lentils and beans.
Exactly.
I remember maybe a decade ago there was a similar thing.
Yeah.
And it seemed to work out pretty well. Do you think they can pull it off again?
It's a bold move for sure, and the budget seems to be taking it pretty seriously. They're promising that the government will actually buy up certain types of pulses for the next 4 years.
Oh, wow.
Guaranteeing farmers a market for their crops, kind of like a safety net.
Yeah.
But do you think that could maybe lead to too much production? Or mess up the market in some way?
Interesting point.
What?
It's definitely a gamble.
Yeah.
But then you get these really specific details, which I love.
Okay.
They're making a whole board in Bihar just to boost production and sales of makhana.
Oh, yeah.
Those foxnuts you see in snacks and desserts.
Right.
It's such a specific thing.
It's very niche.
Do you think that level of detail is helpful? Or could it be like a distraction?
I think that's an interesting question. It shows on one hand that they're really paying attention to regional strengths and special products.
Right.
But then on the other hand, maybe some people would say it's too much micromanaging.
Yeah.
It definitely makes you think about how much central planning is too much.
That's true.
Yeah.
All right, so agriculture is the first engine.
Right.
What about MSMEs? I always hear people talking about them being the backbone of the economy. But I have to admit, I sometimes tune out when they get into the details.
Sure.
So what's different about this budget when it comes to small businesses?
I think this budget is taking it up a level. They're not just talking about it. They're actually putting some serious resources behind MSMEs.
Like, what are the big things?
So they're making it easier for small businesses to grow by changing how they're categorized. And then there's this huge credit guarantee program.
Okay.
That's going to make a ton of extra credit available, something like 1.5 lakh crore over the next 5 years. That's a massive amount of money going to that sector.
Whoa, that's a lot.
Yeah.
What about all this talk about Make in India? I know it's been a big priority, but how does it actually connect to this budget?
Oh, it's right at the center of it. This support for MSMEs is all about making it easier to do business in India, to produce goods right here, and to really boost our manufacturing.
Yeah.
Think about things like customized credit cards for really tiny micro enterprises and a new fund of funds to put another 10,000 crore into startups.
Wow.
It's not just about keeping these small businesses afloat. It's about making them the driving force behind a manufacturing revolution.
That's a big goal.
It is.
Do you think it's enough to make India like a global manufacturing power?
It's definitely a big bet, and we'll have to see how it all unfolds. But all this talk about manufacturing does make you wonder, are they maybe neglecting other parts of the economy?
That's a good question.
It's all about balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
So let's move on to that next engine and see how they're addressing that, and that's investment.
Okay.
This is where things get really interesting.
Okay, investment. The third engine powering this whole Viksit Bharat idea.
Right.
But it's not just about like throwing money at random things, is it?
No, this budget's got like a two-pronged approach,
Okay.
investing in actual physical infrastructure like roads and bridges, but also human capital, so like education, skills, training, that kind of thing. It's about like building the foundation for the future,
Right.
but also making sure people have the tools to actually make it in that future.
I like that.
Yeah.
So like, what are some of the big ticket items in this budget that really jumped out at you?
Well, they're offering states a massive 1.5 lakh crore in interest-free loans, specifically for developing infrastructure.
Okay.
So that's going to like unlock tons of new projects, and then they've got this asset monetization plan, and they're hoping that will bring in even more funds. We're talking 10 lakh crore.
Those are some serious numbers.
Right.
But it's not all just concrete and steel, right?
Right.
I saw they're extending the Jal Jeevan mission to 2028
Yeah.
to try to get tap water to every rural household in India.
Absolutely.
That's going to be huge for so many people.
It's a total game changer for millions of people, and it really highlights the social side of this budget. Access to clean water isn't just about convenience.
Right.
It's about health, dignity, opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then there's a nuclear energy mission, aiming for 100 gigawatts of nuclear power by 2047.
Yeah.
That's a long-term bet on a pretty controversial technology. What do you think about that?
It's definitely a bold move. Nuclear power, obviously, it's got its pros and cons, and it'll be interesting to see how they deal with things like safety and waste disposal. But it shows they're serious about finding different energy sources and getting away from fossil fuels.
I like that.
Yeah.
And I loved this little detail. The Gyan Paratam mission to preserve over 1 crore of old Indian manuscripts.
Yeah.
It's like they're investing in cultural capital alongside all the infrastructure and tech stuff.
It really shows they have a broad idea of what development means. It's not just economic indicators. It's also about keeping our heritage and knowledge and identity alive.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that progress isn't just about building new stuff. It's also about protecting what we already have.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got agriculture MSMEs investment. What's the fourth engine driving this Viksit Bharat vision?
The fourth engine is taking India global. It's all about exports.
Exports, okay, I'm all ears. How are they going to turn India into like an export powerhouse?
They're launching a whole export promotion mission
Okay.
with some really ambitious goals, and it's going to be a very collaborative approach involving the ministries of commerce, MSME, and finance all working together.
I like that they're breaking down the silos.
Yeah.
What's this mission actually going to do?
All those problems exporters run into,
Right.
like getting credits, all the paperwork, the regulations in other countries.
Yeah.
This mission is all about making that stuff easier.
Okay.
It's about helping Indian businesses, especially those smaller ones, sell their stuff around the world.
So basically making things easier for businesses that want to go global.
Exactly. And to really streamline things, they're starting this digital platform called VAR TradeNet.
Bar trade net.
Think of it like a one-stop shop for everything about international trade,
Okay.
documents, financing, even logistics.
Oh, wow.
It'll work with the existing unified logistics interface platform to make the whole export process super smooth.
Streamlining definitely sounds like a good start, but how are they going to make Indian products more competitive, out there in the global market?
There's a big emphasis on getting India into those global supply chains. They're picking out specific sectors that have real potential and setting up these special task forces with government people and industry experts to focus on specific products and supply chains.
So like a more targeted strategic approach to trade.
Precisely. They're looking at everything from making manufacturing better here in India to streamlining customs and cargo screening. They're even upgrading those warehousing facilities for air cargo, especially for perishable agricultural products, those things that got to get to market fast.
Okay, so it's a pretty comprehensive plan. Any other surprises in the budget when it comes to exports?
Well, they're making a big effort to grow those global capability centers, those hubs for multinational companies.
Yeah.
In smaller Tier 2 cities, they're working on a national plan to help states attract these centers and make their infrastructure better, train up their workforce, and even update local regulations to be more business-friendly.
So basically spreading the wealth a bit.
Yeah, it's about making sure economic growth doesn't just benefit the big cities.
Right.
And that's actually a theme you see throughout this budget.
Hmm.
This idea in inclusivity and making sure different regions develop at a similar pace.
I like that.
It ties back to those 6 domains they identified for big changes over the next 5 years.
Yeah, those 6 big areas they're targeting for reform taxation.
Yeah.
The power sector, urban development, minding the financial sector, and regulatory reforms. Why those specific areas?
They see these as the bottlenecks, the things that are holding India back.
Okay.
If they can reform these areas, they believe it'll unlock a wave of productivity investment and growth, making India more competitive on the global stage.
So it's about making the whole economy more dynamic and efficient.
Yeah.
What are some of the reforms they're suggesting in these 6 areas?
Well, in the financial sector, for example, they're raising the limit on foreign direct investment in the insurance sector to 100%, which is a big change.
Wow.
But there's a condition to get that higher limit companies have to invest all the premiums they collect right here in India.
So attracting foreign money, but making sure it benefits the Indian economy.
Exactly. They're also expanding the reach of the India Post Payment Bank in rural areas, and continuing their focus on financial inclusion. And to tackle the issue of infrastructure financing, they're creating this partial credit enhancement facility for corporate bonds through the National Bank for financing infrastructure and development.
Okay, I got to be honest, that one went over my head. What does that even mean?
Basically, it's a way to make infrastructure projects less risky and encourage more investment in that sector.
Okay, makes sense. What about all the talk about regulatory reforms? What does that actually look like?
It's about moving away from all those strict regulations and creating a system that's more based on trust.
Okay.
The goal is to cut through the red tape, make things simpler, and make it easier for businesses to operate and create jobs.
Less bureaucracy, more trust.
Yeah.
I like the sound of that. How are they going to do that?
They're putting together a high-level committee to review all those non-financial regulations, licenses, and permissions that slow businesses down. It's like a big regulatory spring cleaning.
I love that. So sweeping away the cobwebs and making everything more efficient.
Exactly. And to keep things transparent and encourage some healthy competition, they're launching an investment friendliness index of states.
Oh, interesting.
It's a way to see which states are doing the best job at attracting investment and being business friendly.
A little friendly competition to get everyone on board?
You could say that. They're also creating something under the Financial Stability and Development Council to look at existing financial regulations and see how they can be improved.
So it seems like they're really serious about making the whole regulatory environment more flexible and responsive to what the economy needs. But are they doing enough? I've heard some critics say that these reforms aren't really changing that much, that they need to be more drastic. What do you think?
That's a fair point. Real reform takes more than just changing a few rules here and there.
Right.
It means changing the way we think about things and being willing to challenge the way things have always been done.
So are you saying these reforms are not enough?
I think it's too soon to tell. But the budget definitely shows they're moving in the right direction. Remember the Jan Vishwas bill that decriminalized a bunch of legal provisions?
Yeah.
That was a big step toward simplifying things and taking some of the pressure off businesses and people.
Yeah, I remember that being a pretty big deal.
Well, they're building on that with Jan Vishwas Bill 2.0, which will decriminalize even more provisions in different laws. It's all about building trust and making it easier to do business in India.
Okay, so they're taking on these 6 big areas with a mix of specific reforms and this broader shift towards a more trust-based system.
Yeah.
But with all this talk about investment and reforms, it makes you wonder, how are they going to pay for all this?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's where things get even more interesting.
Okay, let's talk money. We've talked about these 4 engines for growth and all these reforms, but where's all the funding coming from?
Well, the budget makes it clear that they're focused on fiscal responsibility, basically making sure the government's spending is in check. They're trying to find that balance between making big investments, but also keeping the country's finances healthy.
Makes sense. So, what's the overall fiscal situation?
So the latest estimate for the fiscal deficit, which is basically how much more the government is spending than it's taking in,
Right.
is 4.8% of GDP for 2024-25. For 2025-26, they're projecting it to be 4.4%.
Okay.
And the plan is to bring that number down gradually each year.
Okay.
The idea is to make sure that the central government's debt as a percentage of GDP keeps going down.
So they're trying to spend responsibly without, like, totally stopping development? But where's the money coming from to cover that deficit?
They're planning to borrow from the market, use some money from small saving schemes, and explore other revenue options.
Okay.
But remember, they've also made some big promises on personal income tax.
Right.
And that's what everyone's really interested in.
Yeah, definitely. Everyone's been waiting to hear about those personal income tax changes, especially with the new tax regime. I think the finance minister even said something about the middle class being the strength of India's growth.
Yeah, she did.
Sounds promising, right?
It does. She was pretty clear that they want to ease the tax burden on the middle class. And they're not just talking about it, they're actually doing something about it. Under the new tax regime, you won't have to pay any income tax if you earn up to 12 lakh.
Wait, did I hear that right?
You did?
No income tax up to euro 12 lakh. That's huge.
It is. It means anyone earning up to 1 lakh per month, not including things like capital gains,
Right.
will be completely exempt from income tax.
Wow, that's going to make a big difference for a lot of people.
For sure. And for those who are salaried, the limit is even higher. With the standard deduction of $75,000, they can earn up to 12.75 lakh and still pay zero income tax.
So big relief for anyone earning below that limit?
Yeah.
But what about everyone else? Are the tax rates changing for those making more than 12 lakh?
Yes. They've adjusted the tax slabs and rates for everyone. Want to hear the new breakdown?
Absolutely. Hit me with the numbers.
All right, so here's the new structure straight from the budget speech.
Sure.
0 4 lakh rupees, nil 4 8 lakh rupees, 5%, 8 12 lakh rupees, 10%, 12 16 lakh rupees, 15%, 16 20 lakh rupees, 20%, 20 24 lakh rupees, 25%, above 24 lakh rupees, 30%.
So even for those earning more than 12 lakhs, the tax rates are lower than they were before.
That's right. The government's thinking is that these lower rates will encourage people to spend more, save more, and invest more, which will ultimately lead to stronger economic growth.
Yeah, it makes sense. When people have more money, they tend to put it back into the economy. But is it enough to make a real difference? Some economists are saying these tax cuts are going to mostly benefit the wealthy.
And others are worried about how it will affect the government's revenue. What do you think?
It's a complicated issue. There's no easy answer. The impact of these tax cuts is going to depend on a lot of things, and we'll have to wait and see how it all plays out. But one thing is for sure, this budget is walking a fine line between trying to stimulate growth and making sure things stay fiscally responsible. So we've talked about the 4 engines driving Viksit Bharat's agriculture: MSMEs, investment, and exports. We've covered those 6 key areas that need reforming. And we even gotten into the nitty-gritty of personal income tax. It's been quite the deep dive.
It really has. And this budget is packed with interesting details, like those changes to customs duties.
Oh, yeah.
Remember how they're trying to make things simpler for importers and exporters by cutting down the number of tariff rates?
Yes. And all those exemptions on essential medicines and parts for things like electric vehicles and ships. It seems like they're really focused on supporting key industries and making India more competitive.
Exactly. They're also making a big push to promote manufacturing here in India and rely less on imports.
Right.
Remember those exemptions on key minerals and capital goods for making lithium-ion batteries?
It's clear they're laying the groundwork for India to be a leader in manufacturing and technology.
Absolutely. And they're not just focused on the big picture, they're also thinking about the little guy.
Right.
Remember those measures to support handicrafts and marine product exports. Those will have a real impact on small businesses and artisans.
This deep dive into India's budget, 2025-2026, has given us a lot to consider. It's a budget full of big goals and a clear vision for the future, but it's also a budget with risks and challenges.
What I find really interesting is how it tries to balance economic growth with social inclusion. That focus on things like rural development, clean water, and education, alongside those huge investments in infrastructure and technology.
Right.
It suggests they see those goals as going hand in hand, not as being in conflict.
It definitely raises some important questions.
Yeah.
Can India really achieve fast economic growth while making sure everyone benefits? Will these ambitious plans actually translate into real improvements in people's lives?
I guess only time will tell.
And that's what makes it so fascinating, right?
It is.
A budget isn't just numbers on a page, it's a roadmap.
Yeah.
It's a story that's still being written.
Very well said.
We've given you the key takeaways and the context. Now it's up to you to decide what you think about this budget. Head over to our website or our social media and share your thoughts.
We'll be back soon with another deep dive into a new topic. Until then, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep learning.